Hi, this is Charlie Mato-Toyela with Blue Bear Flutes, just returning to show you another how-to video on making a triple drone flute. This is something we've had a lot of requests for, just as we've had the requests for some of our other drone videos that we've made. I know that a lot of people really been looking forward to this one. And of course, our last video, I think, big time flute making video, was making a low bass A flute. We had that one in two different versions. We had one making it out of wood and making it out of PVC. Don't think we're going to be making one of these out of PVC anytime soon, so hold off on asking for that just yet. Anyway, this is a Western Cedar Triple Drone Flute, and I'll tell you a little more about how this guy plays and how it comes about. The original drone flutes that were made in Central America came in a number of sizes and shapes and types and colors and number of tubes. Most of the ones I've seen have been either two tubes, meaning two flutes, of course, or three. This one has three. Of course, you've seen our other standard drones before, which are the two tube types. We also now offer the A-frame drones. As I had mentioned previously, the A-frame drones I believe to be a little more Greek, I guess, in origin. A lot of the ones that I've seen that have been made are beautiful, but the only culturally significant A-frame drones, that's a type that looks like this. Mine's put up right now, so I can't show you. They are specifically originally from Greece. Having said that, the side-by-side drones, or shotgun drones some people call them, this would be a triple barrel, but they are a little more similar to the ones that were made in Central America. Of course, most of them were made out of clay that we know of, maybe a few of them out of some type of reed or cane, but the clay ones are the common ones that we've been able to find. So, this guy is a unique, very interesting instrument. It is a key of A, which is a medium high tone A drone flute. And what we have here on this one side is an A minor pentatonic Native American flute with basically a bass note is what we have on the other side. However, there is a fingering on the back here for the C note, which is what's on most of our standard drones. If you have a drone, usually there is a fingering for the C on the drone chamber because, number one, most importantly, you can reach it, and number two, it makes a really beautiful sound. I can play that for you just on the two chambers of this. As you see, there are three mouthpieces, so I can play just the two sides and let you hear what that sounds like. That's with letting my finger off this bottom hole here. So the triple drone, of course, we have the bottom fingering for the C on this A flute, of course, which is a great option because a drone in the first place takes twice as much air as a standard flute does. So a triple drone takes 3 times as much air, typically, as a standard flute does. So once again, the fingering's on one side. There is a fingering under the back side over here that masks the bottom note of the drone, and then this side over here is actually the 4th note of the scale, not the 3rd note of the scale. The reason being is the bottom 3 notes on a minor pentatonic scale are usually like the major, the major 3rd or whatever, the major chord, you know. So in the case of the A, you would have A, C, and D. Now A, C, and D sound great, especially if you're Beethoven. They sound wonderful. But on a minor instrument, an instrument that is designed to be played in a minor scale, playing a major chord on that is somewhat of a discord. So we try to stay away from making that kind of sound. Having said that, on this particular, there's so many different configurations too, by the way. The ones I've seen from Central America are just amazing. I think I've shown some pictures of other ones in the past that look like snakes, that look like this, that look like that. Some of them are straight, just like this. And most of the original ones were like this. But the note that we have over here on this side of an A triple drone is going to be E, which is the 4th note of the scale. A, C, D, E. Yep. So it's going to be the E note, which is in harmony with all the rest. And of course, most importantly, the one note that you really want it to be in harmony with is that dude right there, the C note on the drone chamber. So, and this one does not have any additional fingerings on this chamber. Believe me, you don't have enough fingers, so it's okay. You don't need the extra fingerings. If you wanted to design it to put a plug in it, then you would have to take that plug out sometimes and leave it out and take in the middle of play. It's just not feasible. It's not convenient. So that's why I like to make our drones with the simple number of fingerings so that we can use all of the notes while we're playing. It's the way it's really supposed to be. So anyway, just a simple demonstration here. I'll start off on just the flute side. So you hear, it's a really great E note, and then you have, that you can play in the central chamber, and then the last, just like a standard Native American flute. So we're going to see how you make one of these, and of course I'm going to be showing how to make it in A. You can imagine with our other videos, we have countless videos on making other key flutes, but making like a triple drone in the key of E only takes a little bit of math, and I'll show you how to do that yourself if that's what you're endeavoring to do. It doesn't mean you have to do it, especially doesn't mean you should do it. Oh my gosh, sometimes I think flute making drives you mad, but anyway, I just wanted to show you what we do to make our triple drone A flute, and like I say, give you an example of how to do that kind of thing. Once again, if you're not a woodworker or not, qualified to use these type of tools, please don't imitate anything you see in our videos. I've been hurt. All woodworkers that are my friends that I know, all flute makers I know personally, have been hurt, cut digits off, stitched them back on, sometimes gone to levels we can't go back from. So anyway, let's go to the next station and see what we do then. So of course you need to remember to wear your safety goggles, not just on your head like I do a lot of times. The first thing we're going to do is basically take a piece of solid cedar here. We're making this one out of red cedar as opposed to our western cedar model. Take a piece of cedar, and then we basically cut it down to the width of our A triple drone, and you can kind of see that they're about the same exact size, as close as humanly possible, except for this one's thicker, which is good because we're about to cut it in half to make the flute with. So you're going to want to know the width of this guy here is 3 1/8 of an inch wide. The length of it, mind you, I cut the length of most of my A and any of our flutes long enough that they can support either an A flat or an A at 432 hertz, and sometimes on a rare occasion A flat at 432 hertz. Gosh, please don't ask me for one of those. But it's only a little smidgen longer, but anyway, we're looking at about 18 3/4 of an inch. We're going to wind up cutting some off of this to make it in tune, but that's where we'll start. And then with the table saw, like I said, I'm going to cut this piece of wood in half, and I'm only going to cut it up so far so that I can come back and cut the other half of it from the other side. And I'll show you how to do that. It's important when you're cutting a piece of wood, or when one is cutting, or when a piece of wood is cut. Not suggesting once again that you should be doing this, because it may be dangerous. I've cut my finger off already, so I mean it can happen. Anyway, when one is cutting a piece of wood in half, or if you're having to make multiple passes with a saw in order to cut the wood, and yes, this table saw is big enough that I could cut this in half in one shot, but I find it cuts straighter if I do it in two shots. Anyway, you don't want to rotate the wood around this way, because if you do, that 1/2 millimeter that you're off on one side will be 2/2 of a millimeter on the other side, which is a little more noticeable. So instead of cutting it that way and then going back and cutting it this way, we're going to cut it this way and then come back keeping the same side against the fence. That's a little trick that most everybody should know if you're a woodworker. And once again, many of you probably aren't going to be making this kind of flute, but at least you'll know how it's made, which is not a bad idea. So let's get started on that. So many of you may have noticed that I was getting bind up just a little bit there on the end. That's because my fence was not perfectly straight. This is an old table saw, and the fence has been gone for some time, so I've got this other kind of makeshift fence which is working pretty good for us. But sometimes if you don't get it exactly straight, it will bind up and cause it to run a little thin on one side, thick on the other. But I'm going to run this guy through my planer anyway, so it'll be okay. That's where we're heading next, and then from there to the router. So I'll go plane it up. You don't have to see that unless that's really the kind of thing you like to watch, but we'll come back to the router table and explain from there. Okay, so now we have two nice and flat surfaces for putting together a flute, which is great because the flatter they are and the smoother they go together, the more likely you are not to see the seam of the wood being put back together. Now, a lot of you may ask the question, why do you cut this wood in half when you could just bore it out? Well, original Native Americans did not bore out because they didn't have such a tool. I started at about the age of 15 making flutes, and having made them that long, I have found hundreds of reasons why it's better to split it in half instead of using a machine to bore it out. But having said that, the main reason that I don't like to bore flutes out, the reason I like to make them this way, even though I'm using a modern tool, I'm still following some of the principles of the original flutes. And that's important to me. So, like I say, personal preferences. Like my dad used to say, 6 of one and half a dozen of another. Anyway, what we're doing here is we're going to route this with the router. I'll tell you the settings here, what we're doing. The first thing I'm going to do is make the depth is going to need to be 1/2 of 3/4 of an inch, which I keep my everything in metric over here, so sorry if I'm dancing around on metric and standard. But 1/2 of 3/4 of an inch is 9.5 millimeters. It's 9.45. I always like to be on the top end of that if I can help it. 5.5. 6.0 is just a pinch much, not too bad, but anyway, 50 or 5.5 is great. So 9.55 millimeters deep is how deep I've set my router bit. This is a fresh router bit I just put on there a few minutes ago, so we should have nice smooth sailing on this video. The fence where it's set at is approximately 3/16 of an inch. And 3/16 there will give us a nice 3/16 thick wall on the outside of the flute, and that really helps out, in my opinion, as far as the structurability of the flute, but not making it so fat that it just looks like a giant archaic piece of furniture, which is what a lot of those turn out to be. Anyway, the next thing we're going to do here is route this, just like making a drone. If you've seen our other videos, we're going to route one side, we're going to stop and then route all the way through on that one, and then we're going to turn it around and route this side exactly the opposite way that we were doing the other one, and then I'll show you what that looks like, and I'll do the other one, and from there then we'll do the technical part, which is right in the middle. And it's not really that hard, but that's where your questions are probably going to come from, is how do you figure the size of that. It's super easy. I'll show you in just a minute. So let's go ahead and route this out. Okay, so now we have 2 flute areas and their appropriate air tracks up there as well, but we need to make that one in the middle. Now, of course, there's 2 ways to do this. Either A, you can go and kind of do it by sight, or B, you can add the width of your bit, which this bit is a 3/4 inch round-nosed router bit, or flute router bit. It's also called a core box. Sometimes they're called a cove, but coves are usually specific to ones with a little bearing on the top. But core box is what I grew up calling it. It is a round bit today, I think is what they call it, kind of generic. But anyway, since it's 3/4 of an inch wide, you want to add that 3/4 of an inch to your 3/16, which is the side wall thickness and also the first setting. So you want to set that to be 3/16 right there, and then here's your 3/4 right here. So we can do that. I'll tell you the measurement, but most importantly, like I say, you can do it by sight as well, which I'll show you. It's always good to double check your work there. Actually, I may have told you a story here, because I know I've done this about a bajillion times. Sometimes I get mixed up on which flute I'm making. But you actually, because of the width of your piece of wood, in order to get this in the center and to have because you may use a wider piece of wood, you may use a narrow one, you can eyeball it here to see where the center of the router bit is going to go. But once again, in order to get that right, since we know that it's 3/16 from here to here, and then it's 3/4 from here to here, we can add the 3/16 and the 3/4, and then we need to add another 3/16 to it, and here we are. So that's where I'm going to route the center of it. And on my router table, once again, it's 1 inch and 3/16. I'm going to go ahead and lock that down, and we'll route through it real quick. Okay, so we have a flute now with 3 chambers, 3 air supply chambers, and 3 flute chambers. And I've gone ahead and drilled my fingerings on the far side, which will be on the right side here, facing this way. When you're looking at it, it's going to be on the right, but also when you play it, it's going to be on the right. It's the way it should be. You don't have to have a mortiser to drill these top holes. You can do that with just a round drill. We use the mortiser and make them square holes because the square holes are easier for us to make sound holes with more quickly. I've used them round for I don't know how long, forever, and only have gotten a new mortiser in the last, say, year or so. So anyway, long story short, here we go. The fingerings, roughly, let's see what we're looking at here. From the top of the flute chamber area, not the center of the sound hole, we're looking at the first fingering is going to be 4 3/4, and then 5 1/2, and then 7 and looks like it's going to be about 3/16. I don't have 16th markers on this one, but that's what that is. And then I have 8 3/16, and then just about 9 3/16. Now, on the metric side of things, people always ask us those questions. Once again, just kind of rough estimates, about 122 millimeters, 140 millimeters, 183 millimeters. Let's see here, 209 millimeters, and looks like 36. I'm going to say 236 millimeters to the last fingering. Now that's this side of the flute. Of course, to make it like the regular triple drone that we're making, we went ahead and put the extra fingering in the back side of the center chamber as well. And it is at, once again, about 9 3/16, roughly the same location. And of course, on the metric side, we're looking at, once again, about 236 of the middle chamber, and that's where we're going to put the actual drone chamber of the flute's going to be in the middle chamber. It's going to have the second fingering that our regular standard drones have, so that you can play the C, which is the tonic of the A minor pentatonic scale. And the C, of course, sounds great with all the other notes of the scale, so that's why we put that one there. Once again, this is an A minor pentatonic triple drone, and I'm going to go ahead and glue it together if you want to watch that.